like that. I like supporting the kids and being able to walk and get some exercise. And to me, golf is wonderful when you can walk with a caddy. And I like that part of it. And of course, it's not going to kill you either. Lakewood's fairly flat, so it's not like you're going to go up and down hills and not enjoy the round. And yet, the members that I talked to said that the course was difficult enough that it was always a great experience. You're going to find lies you never had before and that sort of thing. And yet not so difficult that it was going to eat you up every time. So.
Good.
Well, back when you joined then, John, it was Jerry Boykin and Chuck Lott were the major...
Right. And we've had, in what, 50 years, we've had 2 pros. We've had I think Jerry was here, what, 30 years or so?
Yes.
So, and Tom Waiterich is coming on 20, so I've been here 32 years. We've had 2 pros. And I think that adds a lot of stability to, obviously, to any club, but particularly ours. We don't, the boards change and the presidents and the executive committees change. The Greens committees change, et cetera, but we've been blessed to have a lot of stability with our golf pros, and frankly, very much the same is true with our golf superintendents as well, Chuck Lott and Jim Noel.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that really helps us with the fact that we have had that stability, as well as, of course, guys that really can care about the course and a beautiful foundation to start with. So, yeah.
There's some fond memories of the golf course and when you've been playing, or unusual things.
Well, Vic, you and I have had some of those memories together. I think back, the invitationals have been wonderful. I've played, wasn't able to play the last couple of years, but I've played 29, I think, out of that 32 years that I've been here. I played in 29 invitationals. Never won it. Always keep coming back for more, but always having a great time with the guys that you're playing with, or the matches and that sort of thing. So those memories are really right there in the forefront. But there's a lot of other great memories. I remember one invitational. I came back, obviously, being involved with the insurance, some of the insurance things at the club. I put up a hole-in-one policy, and this is probably 15 or 20 years ago. A long time. Hole-in-ones weren't, hole-in-one insurance policies weren't yet. They were popular, but they weren't that popular all the time. And we had a car on one of the holes, and the policy backed up most of the cost to the club for the car. And I come walking in. First of all, I'd negotiated this one hole-in-one policy with the underwriter that I have dealt with a company, and I felt badly because I had really negotiated it premiums down, I mean, all the way, and I come walking in on the Saturday evening event only to learn that, hey, we had a hole-in-one on number 3. And I go, great, that's phenomenal. Of course, I'm all duded up in my tux and so forth, and I got to go running around now and find out all the details. So I said, well, we have to have under the conditions of the contract, under most contracts, you have to have a witness on the hole, and the witness has to be somebody normally that's not playing in the event. We normally put a caddy out on the hole that didn't get a job that day, and that's what we did that day. Sitting under the tree reading a book most of the time, and all of a sudden, boom, there's a hole-in-one. I said, well, who was the witness on the hole? And they said, Mark. I said, great. What's Mark's last name? I don't know. Well, where's Mark? I don't know. And I'm going, oh, no. I got my own club, a hole-in-one with a member that I know well, and there's going to be a problem here if I don't find Mark to witness the thing. Well, long and short of it, Mark had left, but they tracked down Mark's name off the caddy sheet and where he lives. And I go to Mark's house. Of course, I got my tux on. My wife and another couple were here having a great time. I missed the whole cocktail party. Didn't say one hors d'oeuvre for me, I'm sure. But I get Mark, and I witness the card, and I'm feeling a lot better then, obviously. I get back here, and the underwriter was great. I call him up Monday morning, and I'm not looking forward to, you know how that goes when you got vendors that you're working with. Not looking forward to that call. Well, it was just the opposite of what I thought. He couldn't have been nicer. He says, hey, John, we've been doing this for a few years, and we knew that sooner or later we're going to be paying off. In fact, you want to pay off every once in a while, or somebody thinks you're not playing straight here. The odds are this. And so actually it was the Fireman's Fund, and he gave me a nice check, the payoff of the thing, which I put, endorsed and made out to the club. The club then could pay the individual. and he could do what he wanted with the car or not with the car. You know how that goes. And but the nice thing is he also gave me a Fireman's Fund flag, and we presented that, and the individual was Ralph Marlett. And so I called up Jerry and Ralph. I says, listen, I got the check. Can you make arrangements to see me on Tuesday? Well, funny how guys can change their schedule for a check, you know. And Jerry was already here, but Ralph, you know. So we met out on the hole, and I took their picture presenting the flag and the whole bit, and it was just a nice experience as it turned out. But it didn't start off too well at that cocktail party when nobody knew where Mark was or Mark's last name, you know. So that's a story I'll always remember. But at your own club, you're going to make sure everything's taken care of properly. So we were going to get that check to Ralph somehow, some way, if I had to write it, you know. So.
Did you personally ever have the joy of experiencing a hole-in-one?
No, David, I wish I had. All my friends have had multiple hole-in-ones usually. And a lot of my friends wonder, you know, they think I play a lot of golf, so they think I should have had a hole-in-one by now. At least my wife does. But if you've seen my golf swing, you'd understand why I haven't had a hole-in-one. I'm sure that has something to do with it. I've you know, hit the pin and come close and lipped the cup, etc. But I'm sure someday if I keep playing enough.
Good. Good. What's your handicap now?
Oh, my handicap's 18 now. It's the highest it's ever been.
Gee whiz, now maybe there's a chance I could beat
You and I'll have to play.
I don't think so, but he's always, when I see where you just hit this ball this last week.
You know, you don't win anything off the tee.
Yeah, long drive, like 50 yards in front of me. Yeah, but that had to be close to 280, 300.
Yeah, probably 280, something like that
Yeah.
on that hole. Yeah.
All right, what's the converse? Back in your heyday, what was your low handicap?
I was a 9 and 10 for a while, usually 10 to 12, somewhere in that range. If it got any higher than that, somebody was moaning and groaning. If it got any lower than 9, I couldn't ever win. So that's where it's supposed to be, I think. I really believe, though, the story that you know, as long as you can hit it 180 yards, you can probably be close to a scratch golfer on most courses if you work on it. And I just haven't had the time to work on it. I haven't taken the time to work on it. I haven't had the time. With my swing, it's a lot of work after this a number of years to try to change that swing, you know. So, but I'm sure it's possible. I would like to someday get back down into the.
You mentioned the Invitational. Any other of our tournaments that bring to mind any stories like the Green Coat or?
Oh yeah, the Green Coat. I was playing in this Green Coat, and when Mr. Marquardt won. Was a low score.
Yes.
We had the dawn patrol back then, and they started, you know, before the sun came up, whatever the earliest tee time was. We gave the dawn patrol, and a couple of older guys, and they would play the golf course in about 3.5 hours. Mr. Marquardt, I think, was about 83 at the time, and he was the 4th guy on the team, or second guy on the team, I guess it would be, because there was 2 men. And he and his but they loved to have him on his team because he could chip and putt like crazy. He was about a 34, 35 handicapper, and he was in the morning round. Back then we had we had everybody playing, so they had to do 2 shotguns, one in the morning, one in the afternoon. And about 3 o'clock, they realized Marquardt and his partner are going to be probably at least in a tie, so they thought they better call him because there's an afternoon twosome that was going to tie him. And back then, you know, you'd wait all year long to. You'd have in your locker, you'd have all the winning tournaments, and they'd gave you a label, and you'd put it in your locker or something. You'd have all the trophies. The Green Coat was really special, and of course the thing that was special about it then, not today, was that you got that green coat, and then you wore it to the dinner dance and thought you were hot stuff, you know. So here he is. He's waited all his life at Lakewood Country Club to win this tournament, and he's going to have a chance to win it now. They called him back about 3 o'clock and said, Mr. Marquardt, you better get changed here. It looks like there's going to be a playoff here. You better get back here to the club. He says, fellas, he said, I'm sorry. My significant and I are going dancing tonight, and that's what we're going to do, and we'll have a lot more fun than coming back. And so he gave it up, in other words.
Oh, we did?
He never came back. He was going dancing. He had some other plans in mind that he was going to do that night. I thought that was the funniest story. I was pretty young. He had his priorities right, actually.
Yes.
I can win the Green Coat some other year, maybe. Well, obviously not. But he wanted to go dancing that night, so he never came back. Lots of other stories, obviously a lot of other tournaments. And just when you think you've seen every rule in golf come into play, you know, there's always another rule that comes into play. I remember one of the guys on our, well, it was a year the Paco had his cart go into the 16th hole, roll in there with 2 clubs. They sent the caddies in to get the clubs, but then he had to pay for the dredging the next day to pull the cart out. You know, they called me on the insurance stuff on that one, naturally.
That's when I saw that it was a bulletin board notice it and showed a picture of it, and all of the clubs were just sticking up out of the water, the woods, and all of a sudden the question was, I wonder who his insurance agent is, and of course he's in the insurance business.
Right, right.
Everybody just razzed him in, just ragged on him for a while.
Yeah, that was an event. But there's always some fluke thing that comes up. When on one of the invitationals, one of the young caddies was looking for one of the other guy's balls on the 17th hole on the right side in the rough, and he actually stepped on the ball. Well, we all know that's a 2-stroke penalty, right? Oh, the kid didn't know what he had done, but you know, and of course it cost the guys the hole. So you always got some fluky thing that comes up like that. And it's the beautiful part about golf, and Lakewood Country Club the same way. From an insurance standpoint, lots of experiences naturally to talk about. Some good, some not so good. But we've had, you know, some deaths like everybody else. We had a valet that died on the job. We had a child several years ago, 3 years old, that worked their way in a private party into the swimming pool and drowned. We've had people obviously hit with golf balls. We've had the minor stuff that goes on with, you know, a lot of clubs. When the first demos came out, Waitrose could tell you there was a lot of big drivers that somehow just didn't, you know, they didn't get from there to the demo range and back. And what happened to them? Well, we weren't going to cover those from an insurance standpoint. We would have covered them from an insurance standpoint, but it would have cost the club more than it was worth. So because we had a small deductible at that time, we've increased our deductible over the years to where we self-insure basically anything under $5,000. We run a kind of a kitty and to pay for the smaller things that happen, and so that when we get the larger things, that we're in much better shape. And I've been on the insurance committee for 30 years, and probably 12 or 14 years that I've been chairman. So we've been blessed to really have a good group of guys that you know, volunteer their time on the committee to play the risk manager, if you will, with the committee, or as the committee, and play also risk manager with the staff, because the best risk managers naturally are the staff. So we spend you know, a fair amount of time working with particularly the general manager, the club manager, the golf pro, the superintendent, the behind the scenes, the chef, and everybody in the kitchen and so forth, so they know what to do when something happens, or they see things that may cause an injury or an accident before they happen. That's the main thing, whether it be an extension cord or something else. Fires, obviously one of our biggest concerns, and we've been fortunate not to have a fire in recent years, but as you guys both know, what was it, 62, we had the loss of our first clubhouse, and hopefully we won't have another one like that. Had to rebuild the clubhouse. One of the things that we've done religiously is getting an appraisal every year, or an update of our existing appraisal for all the facilities and on the grounds within the club. And there have been other clubs that have had to assess their members thousands and thousands of dollars because they didn't have adequate insurance when the club burned. And it's pretty silly, because you can get an appraisal and an update for, you know, $1,500 or something a year, $2,000 a year. And once you have all the inventory and everything already, but particularly the clubhouse, it doesn't, you know, it changes slightly, but there's not much that changes over a period of time. So it's pretty inexpensive to keep that replacement cost limit properly written under the insurance contract, and therefore there's no hassles when you get a large loss. And that includes things such as some clubs have run into. The Hunt Club burned down, of course, in private club on the east side several years ago. Kirtland Country Club burned. They had the storage, the bag room at Westwood that burned. And so we learn from other people's losses some of the things that can happen. And A lot of times these things can all be prevented if you have an adequate value insured, and you make sure that every board that comes in, or the finance committee, make sure they do what's necessary to keep that limit there. The other thing we've done, though, is added what's called extensions or increase in cost of construction, because if we did have a fire here, certainly a few years ago, we would have had to put that elevator in right now. And there would be other changes that we'd have to make from a code standpoint that we would, so the insurance contract unendorsed would not pay for that, and we'd have a real problem. We'd have a real problem. We look at the things that could happen to the club so that we got the top end covered, and we don't worry about the couple of $1,000s that aren't going to put the club out of business, but we do worry about the top things that might happen, and what would happen if we did have a loss that might be even more than we've got at risk currently because of the improvements we'd have to make. ADA, American for Disabilities Act,